Every mystery leaves a trace, a clue, a rumor, a piece of evidence history forgot to explain. This is the Enigma Files, where every story is true, every theory is on the table, and nothing is ever fully closed.
Welcome back, everybody. Paul, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you, Tony?
I am good. Another episode coming up. We're episode 4.
Yeah, crazy. Already 4 episodes.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Absolutely. And I have definitely been having fun doing these episodes and learning some things and just kind of going over these with you. They've been pretty wild so far.
They have, and we've had a good range of topics, I think. Hopefully, listeners out there, you've enjoyed it. Little treasure hunt, little murder mystery, little conspiracy. And that's kind of our goal, is to just kind of mix it up and cover a whole big, swath of topics. So,
yeah,
and by the way, to the folks out there, if you come across an interesting story and you want us to tackle it, send it in. We'll give it a look. We're looking for ideas just as much as hopefully you guys are looking to be entertained by us. So give us a follow on Spotify and send us your theories and maybe some cases you'd like us to look into, because this week we got a doozy of a case.
That's wild.
It is. And this is one I had in researching topics. This was one that came up that I wasn't super familiar with. You actually brought it to me too, which...
Yeah. This is one of my favorite mysteries.
This is a cool one. I had slightly looked at it when we were discussing about doing this podcast, and then doing the dive for this episode. Man, it's wild. It's wild.
So I think a lot of times we're going to try to stay pretty grounded. We're probably not going to get into a lot of like supernatural aliens type of weird stuff. But today we're breaking the rules. We're going to get into aliens. Well, always Bigfoot and lizard people. We're going to get into aliens and all kinds of crazy stuff here. This is a wild one. So let's get into it. So, today we're going to dive into one of England's strangest medieval mysteries. This is the case of the Green Children of Woolpit. So this is a tale of 2 children who appeared out of nowhere with skin tinted green, speaking an unknown language, terrified of daylight, and claiming to come from a place called St. Martin's Land. Was this folklore, a misunderstanding, or something otherworldly? So what we do know, here are the facts. This takes place in the 12th century, and this is right around the reign of King Stephen or King Henry II. And just so you know, Tony, I have some mild dyslexia. And when I see King Stephen, I see Stephen King, and I have to kind of like stop for a second.
Though, in fairness, when we go through the story, this could be a Stephen King novel.
Oh, this could totally be a Stephen King story.
So let's not say it's a dyslexia as much as it's you're just getting out in front of his next bestseller.
Right. Yeah. Right. So this takes place in the village of Woolpit, which is in Suffolk, England. And if we have any listeners from England, hopefully I said Suffolk correctly, but who knows? I have English friends, and I always tell them we speak the same language, but we don't speak the same language. But this town, this village, was named after the wolf pits that they dug these traps to catch wolves, which I would think that they would call it wolf pit, not woolpit. You would think that might be like sheep or something, but no, in fact, it's named after the pits that they dug to catch wolves. Are you with me so far?
They couldn't pronounce the F. It came out like an L. I mean...
Yeah, or maybe
it's a hard L.
Yeah, maybe it's a soft L.
Oh, soft L. Yeah, that's what it would be.
Yeah, there's your Anchorman reference. Yogging. Yogging. It's a soft J. Um, but so, or maybe the village next to it was also called Woolpit. So like on like email where it would be like Woolpit 5839, they just called it Woolpit. Anyway,
Wolf Pit
so
2.
yeah, Woolpit too. Yeah. So the appearance of these children, the villagers working near the pits discovered these two children. It was a boy and a girl, and in some of my study or investigation, it says that they were near these like caves. That's where they found the children. Their skin was, as they described, unmistakably green. So this was very clear that their skin was not a normal white like English people, but it was a green.
Yeah,
Um,
one of the things I had real quick was it said that they described it as green like the color of leeks, like an onion, like the
yeah,
onion sprout is how the
yeah.
villagers had described it.
So very green. I also kind of, it made me think of, I don't remember the condition's name, but it's where people have too much silver in their diet, so their skin turns kind of like blue, and it's pretty unmistakably blue. So these children were green. They were said to be wearing clothing made of strange or unfamiliar material. So I would imagine in this time you're probably wearing a lot of wool. Um, that would have been probably the primary material of this day. Um, I don't think so much cotton, but wool, I would imagine. But this was something that they didn't recognize the material, and they spoke a language that no one recognized or understood.
So just a couple things that kind of like stand out to me. First of all, that the hair on the back of my neck isn't totally standing up just yet.
No.
Because this is 12th century. We're talking about you know, a lot of blank space in the world. The map
Hmm.
isn't filled in. So the weirdest part to me right now would be the skin tone, them being
Yeah.
green. The clothes, the language. It's very conceivable that you have some, remote clan that's out, nomads or whatever it is, that they just haven't interacted with these people before. So I don't think it's super unreasonable to think like, hey, this is weird. Like, other than
Yeah.
like, why are you green? Like
Yeah.
that would be my concern.
Right now, the skin is the only thing that really kind
Yep.
of, I go, huh, it's hard to explain other than, like I said, the whole blue skin thing. It could be a dietary thing, but yeah, nothing super weird yet. So going into diet, or speaking of dietary, so the children refuse any normal food for days. Um, that would be anything that they would have normally ate in this region. But they finally accept raw broad beans and they eat them straight from the pod. Eventually, the children start to eat normal food, and it's said that their skins, the green tint starts to fade at this point. So what are you thinking with this diet, Tony?
So yeah, it just again the food thing to me again not raising too many alarm bells to me. I mean, is it weird that they're only eating beans? Yes.
Yeah,
However, strangers, it could be different part of the world. It's a dietary, you know, plan that they're not used to. So I could see where it's like, we don't know you guys. Are you offering us stuff that we can trust? Oh, raw beans that we saw you pick. Yeah, those we trust.
yeah,
Um, so and then once they notice like nobody's dropping over dead from eating, chicken or whatever they were eating, then they would start to eat that, and then whatever was causing that skin tone, because again, I think it was dietary. I mean, it clearly is. It's coming out of their system. They're eating other
yeah,
things. So whatever they were on, like somebody who eats carrots or like you said, iron, all these different things. If you eat too much of it, it messes with, how
yeah.
you look. So again, am I like, super freaked out about this? No, but it's another weird layer on top of weird layer. Like things just individual things you just kind of you can individually just go, okay, that's I can write this off this way or write it off that way when you break it down. But stacked on top of each other, this story builds out and gets weirder versus builds out and starts to fill in blanks. Like it just kind of does the opposite of what a lot of stories do. Um, but again, I keep going back to it's the 12th century. There's a lot of
Yeah.
unexplained things at this point.
And people are not super educated, so they might not understand a lot of this type of thing. But I want to throw in something here about that skin. So another thing was they were afraid of the sunlight. Like they were so you think about like vitamin D and how even certain regions of the world, our skin is a different color because of the needs of the sunlight and all that kind of stuff. So that might also be a factor in that that green skin tone is maybe they didn't get a lot of direct sunlight and that type of thing.
And something to just even think of too. It's rare, but there are people that do have an allergy to the sun.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to throw out a theory before we even dive too far. Let's say they had a parent who had that allergy. That parent would have then raised their kids to have learned, especially if they're young, they would have learned mom or dad or mom and dad have this issue with the sun. The sun makes them have a rash, makes them sick. We're
Right.
afraid of the sun. Again, and would that seem weird in the 12th century?
Yeah.
Absolutely, because you wouldn't really know about that until
Yeah. And off topic,
centuries
that
later.
that might be where things like vampires came from, or people who have this condition where they can't be in the sunlight, and with uneducated people and superstition, you come up with these type of things. But so once they find them, the children are brought to the home of Sir Richard Decane, and there he cares for these two children, this boy and girl. The boy actually becomes sick and dies shortly after their arrival. The girl survives, she learns English, and the story says that she grows into adulthood. Um,
Yeah, and there's even one point where um, there are some accounts where they give her a name, an Agnes Bear, Barre. So there's different accounts. Things get a little
mhm.
sketch. I mean, you covered the core facts that are agreed on as far as like, hey, we all agree on these, and then you kind of get out,
Yeah.
and this is where we kind of branch into some different theories. But there were some that said, legend says that her name could be this, which is weird because
Okay.
Sir Richard didn't even have that as a name. So who knows? Like,
Yeah.
take it for what it's worth.
Yeah. Yeah. So once she learns English, she's now able to communicate with everyone. And according to legend, this is what she explains. She says that her and the boy came from a place called St. Martin's Land. She said it was always twilight there, so there was no bright sun and no deep night. I almost think of like Alaska in that time where like the sun doesn't really go down. Um, she says that everyone there has green skin, and she said that they were herding their father's cattle when they heard a loud noise. They followed a light and suddenly found themselves in Woolpit. Now, that would make sense if they found them near caves, if they were near these caves and they saw the light from the outside of the cave, that could explain the light portion. But this is where the historical record completely stops, and then the theories begin.
So I think you made an interesting point. Like, with the caves and that, and even with the northern, living up north. I don't know, where geographically she would have said she was from, but it would be interesting if she was, up above that, area, that Arctic Circle area. Again, let's assume that they're a group of nomads. They've been traveling. They don't have a map. They're not very smart. They don't know where they go. It says she was fairly
Mhm.
intelligent, but again, on a scale of compared to who,
Yeah.
you know, um, I don't know. So you did make an interesting point. If they're predominantly living above the circle, where it's never, what is it?
Hmm.
9, 7, 8, 9 months out of the year. I don't know. Somebody from Alaska or in the Arctic Circle, message us and tell me how long you go without seeing a full sunrise. Please, I'd be interested. Um, but is it? I could see where that's something. And then if the parents are again have an illness to the sun or a sensitivity, you could be, let's merge your two thoughts. Living in a place where the sun doesn't always come up for a majority of the year, and I've got the sensitivity to daylight, so we're in the caves part of the time too. I'm
Yeah.
just looking for a rational. My brain looks for rational explanations. I could see that now. I feel like I'm reaching. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like I'm reaching a little bit, but there is some plausibility, I think, to the story. Like I
Yeah.
can't just write it off and just go, "This is insane." And I think there are some explanations, and we'll see some of them.
So these we're gonna do these theories. We're gonna do like most like grounded normal theory, and then we'll get into some of the fantastical, which anyone that's been listening to this, that I am the tinfoil hat, fantastical Bigfoot lizard people guy. Um, so I actually had someone who's a friend of ours listen to the podcast, and he said that we're like the Paul and John of this, where we kind of keep each, like you're more grounded and I'm more conspiracy, and we kind of pull each other to the middle to find a good balance. And that's what's really cool about the two of us doing this together.
Yeah, and I would agree with that.
All right. So the first theory is malnutrition or medical explanation. So the green skin could be caused by, and I'm not going to try to pronounce because I don't know how to pronounce the word, but it's a form of iron deficiency that gives a greenish tint to the skin. And this was common in the medieval times to have this iron deficiency condition. Their odd behavior and diet could be symptoms of malnutrition or poverty. You think about like Haiti, mothers make mud cakes for their children because they don't have food. So, this could be one of those things where they might not have the means to eat some of these other foods. So as kids, like you said, they're not eating them because they don't know them. They don't understand them. These are strangers trying to give them to them. They don't trust them, that type of thing.
And so I think this one, no matter what theory you go with, this is part of it. I believe, just because of how their
Yeah.
skin tone changed. Um, Let me back. If you believe this
Unless
to
we
not be a
completely go
legend,
fantastical.
yeah, okay, two ways. Unless you believe this is fantastical, or you believe it's legend. If you
Yeah.
think that there is some truth to this, and however you fill in the blank that they were real, real people, and these, I think you have to have this as part of your explanation, because there's no other reason that their skin tone would have gone back to what they would have considered not, and you can't see
Yeah.
me, but I'm going to say normal with air
Yeah.
quotes,
Yeah.
normal to what the people finding them would have thought.
In that region.
This would have to be part of it. I think it would explain the boy's illness and getting sick and dying because malnutrition, so he's not
Yeah.
eating. Um, the skin tone, why they're eating weird things to begin with. Poverty is a great example. You pointed out something. We don't know what their economic status of the time would have been because they came from a land that they no one had ever heard of. So, but I think that if you're going to point towards these two kids truly existed, part of your explanation has to have this. Now, is it the whole explanation? No. But from an appearance standpoint, this has got to be in it. Just my opinion.
Yeah, this could be one of those things like the Edgar Allan Poe calling back to the first episode. Like it could be this could be one of several combinations of truth or what actually happened. So theory number 2 is that these were Flemish immigrant children. So many Flemish settlers lived in England at this time. Some villages were destroyed during conflicts, and that could potentially have left these children orphaned. And they may have wandered into Woolpit disoriented, speaking Flemish, so the people in Woolpit wouldn't understand what they're speaking. Or maybe some form of Flemish or, another language, another dialect in that region. So the locals here would say that they're speaking something that we don't understand. So, green skin, which could be dietary, strange clothes, which could be regional, foreign language, which could be regional. Are these real world explanations for, a medieval, supernatural story?
Yeah, so I'm not as in love with this one. Just because, okay, so it does explain some, but it doesn't explain to me the so it doesn't really explain to me the story of where they came from. Um, this is why I don't love this one as much. Um, you would think just from, you know, travel, a stranger visiting Woolpit might have had interaction with one of these, these Flemish refugees. Hears the story and goes, "Oh, this sounds like this," and explains it away. You never hear that. You never see that happen with this. So I'm not as crazy about the theory. Now, the Flemish part. Now, what I think is very possible, take the Flemish part out of it and just fill it in with some other nomadic group that they
That speaks
don't
like a
know about.
tribal language or
A
something.
tribal, yeah. So, great examples. If you go and you start looking at like today, we think that we've covered all the known world. Go look at some of these things in like Papua New Guinea and that, where they still have these tribes
Yeah.
that are protected, where modern man cannot have interaction with them
Mm-hmm.
because these people are still living under their tribal language, their tribal beliefs, wearing their tribal clothing. They've had no and when modern man does interact with them, it doesn't go well for the modern guy. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm more inclined to say Flemish part, no, nomadic group from a different region that they wouldn't know about,
Mm-hmm.
and they just named it some different name, their land. Very possible. So while I don't like the Flemish part, I'm not totally against the concept of like they're refugees from another group that was separated from their tribe, their clan, however you want to call it.
All right. So now we're going to get into some fun theories. So the first one here, this is theory number 3, fairy or otherworldly beings. So back then in medieval folklore, it was full of stories about fairy realms, parallel worlds, places with perpetual twilight. The children slipped from a fairy world or a parallel world into ours through, a portal, like the cave or one of the pits or a crossing point. So, so some type of fairy world, parallel type of world, that kind of thing.
Yeah, this one's. I said we're gonna get fun and weird. Um, so first of all, people thinking that they had wings. They didn't have wings. When you hear fairy, um,
Yeah,
I get the skin color thing. I mean, I could say they came from Oz. They lived in the Emerald City.
yeah.
Like
Or
I
I
do
mean,
keep them.
even the parallel world where like everyone in that parallel Earth, we're gonna get into multiverse theory here. We're for some reason we're all green in this multiverse. In this other universe.
Yeah. Um. Okay. You can tell that I am the more grounded, and I don't
Yeah.
know where you think on this. It is fun. So let me say this before I go completely and just destroy it. Is it fun to kind of think that they could be like, you know, bringing a pot of gold with them? You
Yeah.
know, they're,
Leprechauns.
they're leprechauns. They're after his Lucky Charms. Um, you know, you got to remember again, King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table. You know, Merlin. The whole like dragons. Like there
Yeah. The Lady of the Lake that
the
gives Arthur the sword.
Excalibur. Yeah,
Yeah.
that takes Excalibur down and all this stuff. So like remember this is a time where they're always looking for an explanation to the things that they don't know.
Yep.
So while there's this part of me that's less like you're nuts. Context is king. 12th
Mm-hmm.
century. These
Mm-hmm.
were people that, you know, thought thought there were dragons, thought there were, all these
Mm-hmm.
fantastical tales. So do I just write it off and go, they're nuts? No, I don't do that. Now, do I think that they were, little green men who came from the center of the earth? And no, I don't think that either. I think that if this is being posed as a explanation, 12th century, glasses on, I think you could sit there and go, well, they must be some fantastical fairy or demon or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Um, so do I sit there and hold that against the people all the time? No, I think modern day, if we look through it through our modern day lens, there's ways to explain what's going on with the kids.
Yeah.
It's not as fun. Like
No,
I'll
definitely
give it
not
to
as
you.
fun.
It's not as fun. Um, but like when you hear this, you're like, man, you guys have got to be crazy. Why does this even come up? Again, context is king. The timeline is
Mm-hmm.
king. And when you sit there and you think about the ways that they described, you know, uh, let's think about it. They used to think that if you sailed to the end of the earth, because the earth was flat, sorry to flat earthers out there, um, that there were monsters at the end and you were going to get swallowed.
Mm-hmm.
I think with pretty sound knowledge, we know that's not going to happen.
Right.
I'm on a limb. I get it, but that would have been their explanation, and in that day and time, it would have been an accepted explanation.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I go, no, where do you even come up with this? On the other hand, I go, it's their way of explaining things away. Now, do I think
Mm-hmm.
it's true? I don't think it's true. I don't think that's what really happened here. But I think what you're falling into is the sciences of the time trying to describe why these kids are
Yeah.
green, why their clothes are weird, why their language doesn't match up, why they say. And I think that now in a more scientific time that we live in, we would have had a little different of an
Mm-hmm.
explanation. I don't believe that they're some other worldly dimensional beings. Sorry if somebody out there thinks they are. Want to hear from you, but
Yeah. Yeah. Put
yeah.
it in the comments. Well, so that kind of brings us into the fourth theory. We're gonna maybe get into some ancient alien stuff. I'm picturing that guy from Ancient Aliens. Aliens. He's got the crazy hair. So the extraterrestrial hypothesis is number 4, and this is more of a modern theory, but it's pretty popular. Green skin, strange language, sudden appearance, a twilight world. These are elements that fit a modern alien contact trope. So, maybe in the fantastical theories, if you're one that believes in aliens, this could definitely be something that is a little more possible, I guess you could say. Did medieval England have its own early close encounter? Was this, even as you go in, like I said, you go into ancient alien theory, and you talk about how in some of these glyphs, you see people in like spaceships and things like that. Could this be a close encounter of the third kind with extraterrestrials in the 12th century?
Sure, it could be. I, the kids were just looking the phone home. That's why they wandered in the Woolpit.
Oh, Elliot.
They were looking. They were looking
Yeah.
for. Was it Reese's Pieces?
Reese's Pieces.
Yeah. Okay. So
But
again,
if you believe in aliens,
yes.
if that's your thing, this could definitely be, out of the fantastical, this could probably be a very valid theory.
Okay. So of the
I'm
fantastical,
not saying it is.
I get you. No. So of the fantastical theories, I'll give you this. That if you were to believe one, okay, this one would be the believable one. Again, you can't see me, so you don't see the eye roll as I say that. I don't believe this is the case either. But again, for fun, um, here's the only thing. Okay, so let's look at this way and just think though. Why would their skin color change?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna look at that and just try to poke a hole.
So microevolution, adaption. I mean, Superman came from Krypton, had a red sun, gets powers from a yellow sun. Yeah, maybe it's how your body absorbs the yellow sun. I'm just throwing some ideas out there. Not saying that, that's necessarily what I think, but throwing the idea out there.
So General Zod was after them, and they ran down the cave, and
there you go.
There we go.
The last children of Krypton.
But here's the interesting thing with this. So let's just, all joking aside, the kids never claim they came from another planet.
No.
They never claim that they didn't recognize Earth. So her story when she learns English is never that she ventured across the cosmos. So just keep in mind, I'm just doing this to because I don't believe this one. But if you want to, where is your, other than that they showed up in clothes that weren't recognizable, a language that wasn't recognizable in the 12th century, with what appears to be a malnourishment and some sort of an iron deficiency that goes away when they eat food that would take that out. And again, by no explanation of their story is this is what we did, because they were obviously old enough to explain and learn, and these weren't toddlers who would have had no memory of. Now I get, somebody might say, oh, they had their memory. What? Again, if you want something to fit, you're going to make something fit. Okay, so let's just accept that.
You can piece things together just to make your narrative.
I can get fantastical on the fantastical, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Their story doesn't support this one, so let's just look at the historical legend or record, however you want to view this. Their story doesn't fit it.
Hmm.
So I can only go off of the surviving child who becomes an adult who is said to have learned English, who shares her what happened to her in pretty vivid detail. I mean, we covered it.
Hmm.
At no point does she say we stepped off of a ship or we, you
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah. We
as
traveled the cosmos to get here. No, that's
there's nothing
never
in this,
recorded as part of her
never.
story.
I think this just kind of, I think this just kind of got weeded in because we like little green men and you
Yeah,
know
it's a more of a modern day theory, and I think, like you said, aliens are kind of a part of our culture now.
it just doesn't hold up. It doesn't
No,
hold
yeah,
up.
no. When you put the magnifying glass to it, it's not as. There's definitely some holes
And
in this
I'm
theory.
not even trying to look at it from a like let's ground this in reality. Like I'm just looking at it from what did the people who experience it
Hmm.
say, and no one along the way said anything about an extraterrestrial experience. Like
No,
so again, I think this is just throw the spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks.
yeah, and
But
it doesn't stick.
no, this doesn't stick. The fairy
So
thing. So to be clear, the fairy thing coming from another dimension, and this is coming from the guy who doesn't buy any of this to begin with. That's more plausible than the little green men stepping off of a spaceship. Like if you're looking at those two side by side, and you said pick one, and I know we're
uh-huh.
not between those two. I'd pick the one before that before I picked little green men.
Okay, yeah. So, theory number 5, this one kind of interests me, and I would like to even maybe look at it a little further and think about it. Maybe we might, reopen the case at some point, if you think about these a little bit. But it's the hollow earth or underground civilization theory. So some people suggest that these children came from a subterranean society, which would explain the dim light, that they never were really in like dark or uh, bright sunlight, but it was always dim because you might just be getting some sunlight through like the cracks of the earth. St. Martin's Land being lit by twilight matches underground mythologies. So and going into that hollow earth stuff, we are finding that, scientists have said, we've discovered a new layer of the earth, and it's a literally a layer that is water, that they
It's
never
King Kong. It's King
yeah,
Kong.
that they never they never knew existed. Um, so this theory might be a little more fringe, uh, but I think some of the um some of the pieces could explain like a subterranean society.
King Kong. If you've seen the new King Kong
Yeah,
movies,
yeah.
the kids
Godzilla.
were the kids were running away from King Kong and dinosaurs. Um,
He's got that power glove.
yes, yes, and they had to enter through the Arctic. Like,
Yeah, there you
Mothra
go.
was
There you
there.
go.
That's why they. That's why they wandered out. No,
Or
all
do you
joking aside,
remember Alien vs Predator, where
Journey to the Center
there's
of the
that
Earth.
that subterranean
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
temple.
Journey to the Center of the Earth. Jules Verne fans
Yeah,
out there.
there you go. There you go.
That's been a. So this one's been like a theory. You said it's more of a modern fringe. Like people have thought this forever. I mean, again, Jules Verne, Journey to the
Jules
Center of the
Verne.
Earth.
Yeah.
You go to the center of the Earth. There's dinosaurs. There's all this stuff. Again, okay. Let me back up on this. So, do I think that they ventured from the center of the Earth up a volcano like Jules Verne and came? No, but I think again, like I mentioned, when you start looking for explanations and the time that they were from, you can kind of use this as like a as an explanation,
Hmm.
and say like, were they more likely to stick to caves? Were they a cave dwelling clan? Okay, well then they must have lived in the center of the earth because they didn't come out to the light. So clearly that's, what they were doing. So, I think when you start to hear the kids explain, it was always twilight. Well, okay, so let's just do let's do an assumption here and assume that what they did is they only came out in dusk
Hmm.
and like they stayed out of the sunlight during the day. They
Hmm.
stuck to the caves. The kid's whole life was we're in these caves and then we come out and we do all of our foraging and we do everything at night,
At twilight.
at
Yeah.
twilight and night. So it's always done. Well, what does that sound like to you? Well, I live in the center of the earth. I live in a cave. And again,
Yeah.
when you look for a 12th century explanation, nobody's going to go, well, you're a cave dwelling. What are you going to say? I live in
No.
the center of the
Yeah.
earth.
Oh, yeah. They live in the center of the earth.
So and so then this ties into the fantastical. Volcanoes. How are volcanoes explained? Fantastically, must be a dragon.
Hmm.
How are earthquakes? Must be a giant. Must be a. There was
Yeah.
there was a lot of there's a reason why this was the Dark Ages, and not a lot of education. I mean, there were smart people and some things were going on, but the general public was not, some enlightened. We're not in the Enlightenment era. Um, so while again, rational me goes, this is insane. It doesn't fit. Like that's what I want to say.
Hmm.
If you take a step back and you don't just jump to the first thing your brain goes to and you say, well, let me think about this and think, how does this fit? It fits from the standpoint of they're trying to explain something they don't understand. So if I don't
Yeah.
understand, their explanation, and so again, could these kids have been spend their whole life, dad's afraid of the sun or sick of the sun or whatever it is, members of their, and especially so let's be real, there was a whole lot of, not a lot of branching going on with some of these clans. They had more of a
Yeah.
they had more of a family tree stump than they had more of a family tree. Um, you know, so they had probably more of that going on than anything else.
Hmm.
Um, when you start getting into those genetic things,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
so now you've got genetic problems that
Hmm.
make it to where you have these different things that come up. So I'm allergic to the sun because of some genetic flaw. So I stay in the caves during the day so my kids never see the sunlight. And when we come
Hmm.
out, it's a perpetual dusk and twilight because they need to hunt. So you're going to need to be able to see somehow. So we're using twilight
Right.
and we're using the light in the moon. What does that sound like? Well, it sounds like their story, and it also fits into this whole idea of they're subterranean dwelling people.
Hmm.
They must
They
have
have
come
to
from
explain
Hollow
it.
Earth.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
have to explain it, the same way that we have to explain that when Christopher Columbus sails to the end of the world, he's going to fall off.
Or even you go further, that a god rides a chariot across the sky and brings the sun, across the sky. Man has always tried to explain the unexplainable with what they understand with the earth
And a
around
lot
them.
of it sounds fantastical. And a lot of it, when
Yeah.
you break it down, is fantastical. But what is there always to every myth? There's always a grain of truth,
Yeah.
right? So there's
Yeah.
always a grain of truth to every myth. And what grows out of that grain is the giant myth story, the mythos of whatever it is. And I think
Right.
in this case, if you want to accept this one, I'm not telling you you're crazy. Oh, okay. Let me back up. I'm telling you you're crazy if you think that they lived in the center of the earth. That I am going to tell you. But do I think that you're crazy to sit there and go, well, wait a second, could there be some reason why this story became one of the theories? Well, yeah, because I just gave you a logical step by step as to how you get to that point. Look at it in 12th century, and you've got cave dwelling, hollow earth people, when in fact they're not really hollow earth people.
Hmm.
They're just a weird clan of people who have these things going on that they're surviving.
Right. Which makes it easier to explain in their limited knowledge. So the last theory is the allegory or morality tale. Some people say that this is just a parable about maybe about outsiders. It's a moral lesson on being hospitable to people that are foreigners, or even a symbolic tale about diversity or the unknown, that we shouldn't be afraid of that. Or maybe, a lot of times, a lot of these stories like Hansel and Gretel, those type of things, they're stories that are to teach children not to wander off, because bad things can happen when you wander off.
So they taught him about diversity, an old wooden ship.
Yeah.
To you
Yes.
Anchorman fans out there.
Yes.
It's come up
So
twice in this podcast.
Yeah. So Anchorman is both of ours, one of our favorite movies. So is this just a medieval chroniclers often using stories as metaphor? So what was a story trying to teach? And a lot of times, I think a lot of those stories that we have were that, in fact, just trying to teach morality or a lesson. Like I said, a lot of times these stories about children were meant to help children learn, don't wander off. Bad things can happen, because the one dies. These children never make it back to their people. So if you wander off, you could be lost forever. That type of thing. So the Green Children of Woolpit is one of a few medieval legends recorded by two separate historians. So it gives it a little more weight than a typical folklore. But the interesting thing is, no theory fully can explain every part of the story. So what do you think about this theory, Tony?
So I'll just give you, because I think this ties into my overall theory. So I'll give you my overall that ties into this one. I think it's a little bit of this one and a little bit of reality. And I'll explain what I mean. I totally see where they could have found two kids wandering around and stumbled across the village. 100%. 100% could see where they're malnutrition. 100% could see where they don't speak the same language. 100% can see where their clothes don't fit. But even if you take out those last two parts with the language and the clothes, malnutrition, common thing, totally see it. So what I could see it being is, we found this and we played a game of telephone, and it morphed into a folklore allegory on how we take people in, especially children, in their time of need, especially in a time when you had a lot of people wandering around, especially when there was a lot of conquering of nations and things going around. So I don't think this, I think part of it is rooted in truth of event. Now, does it mean that it was the same two kids? They could have pieced it from different things that happened, but I think it's totally reasonable to think that you have at least, a brother-sister situation. The brother dies, the sister survives, she learns the language, and she lives a full life within the village. 100%. I'll guarantee you, if you go through a historical record, it happened more times than we can even count. So then I think there's a way of explaining to your kids, like you pointed out, we need to be good people to them when they come along, because they could come from strange places, and they could be people that we don't understand. And even if we don't understand them, we need to treat them well. And so I think it might have been reality that was playing out in certain events that morphed into a folklore that was passed down, which you see a lot of times that happens. A lot of times. This event turns into, I think if we were watching this, like if this was a movie, you'd see a thing that would say based on true, loosely based on true events.
Yeah, based on true events, which means it might be one or two facts that are real, and the rest of it's just.
Now, does this have like a total? And we talked about this before. A total, like, if you've ever seen the movie The Village, where like they lived off in the modern world, and they had no idea that things went on, and you go, is this possible? I mean, yes, that's a movie. It kind of had that feel to me, like when we were discussing it, but I think there are true events sprinkled in, and again, every good myth has a kernel of truth. And I think what you have is you have kernels of truth that turned into myth. You know, it explains why you might interact with somebody during this time that has malnutrition. It explains why you might interact with somebody who has a strange disease or a strange illness
Mm-hmm.
or a strange allergy or a strange whatever. This explains it. Their clothes don't match because they're a different, cultural people.
Mm-hmm.
It explains a lot of those things when you're looking for explanations, but there were people that integrated in, and I think the bottom line is it turned into a morality tale of we should be nice to each other. Which, you know what? If this is a morality tale, please, we should be nice to each other. like,
Yeah.
like there's not a bad lesson there. Take in people in need, which is what I think this was. That's just, I
Mm.
think it's a couple of these things that just kind of melded into
So
one.
I I'm gonna say I partially agree with you. I think that this is a completely made up allegory morality tale. You find in this day and time a lot of that. And a lot of times it was presented as real so that if you're trying to teach children, you're presenting it as real. So it's not, oh, mom and dad made it up. It's urban legend. It's this day and time's urban legend. Every urban legend is I have a cousin that has a friend that knew someone that this thing and everyone has that,
The kid
everyone
that ate the
has
Pop Rocks. There's
yeah,
always the kid
yeah,
that
yeah,
had the Pop Rocks with the
yeah.
soda and he
And
died, but
everywhere
you
you
can never,
go,
yeah.
every but you can never really pinpoint exactly who it was. So I think this is a morality tale. And like you said, it's a morality tale maybe first for children to not wander off, or if you see something, don't just go after it because bad things can happen. In this time, with even like the Flemish coming over and settling in England, I think this is one of those, let's be kind to one another. Let's, be kind to outsiders who might not sound like us. And the reason why I think this is completely made up, because the skin thing, it's a weird one, but the one that really it's that the clothes were made of material that they didn't know. It's like, so what exactly what you think Adam and Eve. Well, we know what leaves are, so we can explain that. We know what bark is, so we can explain that. We know what wool is. So what are they possibly wearing that the material wouldn't be recognized? So, and just because it came from two historians, like I said, in today, modern urban legend, everywhere you go, everyone has the cousin who had a friend who knew someone who XYZ uh, ate the Pop Rocks and Pepsi, or their grandma microwaved the dog, or whatever the urban legend might be. You always have more, and you might have multiple people that know someone that knew someone. So yeah, I think this is a completely made up story that was presented as real. And it's just been such a fascinating story that it's been kept alive. And I think I'd like to see this made into a movie.
Yeah, I agree with, like I said, you can find where these might have happened in true events, but I think we're pretty close to agreement on that. It wasn't little green men. It wasn't, lizard people. It wasn't fairies. It wasn't, you know, Hollow Earth. I think at the end of the day, it turned into a, you know, treat your fellow human being well. Don't wander
Love thy
off.
neighbor,
Love thy neighbor. Yes,
you know?
yes. Don't wander off, kids. But treat those in need with some courage. Again, really good lessons. Really good
Yeah.
lessons. I think it just kind of gets drowned out because you look for there's got to be
Well, and the
a
fantastical elements of the story, I think, are what kind of builds more of it's just a made up story to teach kids. I think that's kind of what pulls that into being something that we're still talking about in 2025.
I love it though. I love
Yeah.
this just because it touches so many different things.
Oh yeah, this is like the gambit of different possibilities.
Yeah, love it. So, case closed, or maybe not. This is the Enigma Files, where every ending is just the beginning of another mystery. Please follow us on Spotify. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell whoever you need to tell to give us a follow. Hope you're enjoying it. Share your theories with us. If you think we're crazy, tell us we're crazy. It'll make for more fun. We want to interact with you. And look forward to next week. We got a real fun one for you. It's
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. So just a little teaser. It's a Thanksgiving case. So
Mhm.
definitely want to follow us and give that one a listen to. But until next time.